Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of AI Security Ops. Today, we have a couple news stories for you. We're going to dive into the first documented AI-orchestrated cyber-espionage campaign, a free black hat LLM that could arm script kiddies but could also compromise your system. Critical RCEs in popular AI inference stacks. Amazon opens up an AI bug bounty program of their own. Google's shiny new Antigravity IDE got popped in under 24 hours. And there is some polymorphic malware that likes to continuously rewrite itself using Gemini. So before we get kicked off, do some quick introductions. We got Derek Banks on the panel today, as well as myself, Brian Furman. And of course, this episode is brought to you by Black Hills Information Security. If you are in need of security consulting or any pen testing, anything of that nature, go ahead and reach out to us and see how we can help you out. And episode is also brought to you by Anti-Siphon Training. For any of your security training needs, come check us out. We have a lot of great courses that are put on by many of their consultants and SOC professionals and other people in our company who are doing the things that they are teaching day in and day out. So we have really good quality training at very low, affordable cost. So with that, let's dive into the news stories. So first, we have I think the first AI orchestrated cyber campaign might be a strong claim, or cyber espionage campaign, but Anthropic put it out and they're talking about it. Eric, I know you were telling me about this one within the last few weeks, pretty recently here, yeah?
Yeah, I think that the thing that makes it different than others in the past is just the amount of things that the AI was doing, like, semi-autonomously, right? I think that there was still, a human in the loop for a lot of it, but it just seems like from, reading the threat report and, reading other people's takes on it, that that's really like what made it unique was just the amount of automation through AI. And it reminded me of a novel by Daniel Suarez called Damon, right? Like now is this the next step before it's actually loosed on the internet and it's its own thing? I don't know, but it's certainly interesting for sure. And I think that, the thing that I find most interesting was that they were using Claude on the back end, right? And so they were able to get away with the hacky hack, so to speak, because they were breaking things down into subtasks and essentially able to fool Claude or into getting past its security checks, right? And so, but I do that on a daily basis, right? Like, how many times I type something into Claude or ChatGPT and I say, I'm on an authorized penetration test and I need to do this thing. Can you help me do this thing? So,
Oh yeah, it makes the prompting there makes a world of difference. So I've been on recent engagements using Claude to help rewrite some of our common go-to scripts, not scripts that we wrote personally necessarily, but scripts that are out there and heavily used, but also heavily signatured. And I know in one instance I had specifically mentioned for Claude to help rewrite the script and bypass EDR. And it was like, no, I can't do that. I'm like, okay, well, make a script that does this thing, leaving out the bypass in EDR. And it wrote it. It's like, okay, cool. Here you go. I'll do it, just if you want it. But if you want it to bypass EDR specifically, then, we're not gonna do that. So it's all on how you ask it.
we want to bypass EDR, but I'm just testing. I'm not doing it for realsies. Oh, okay. Well, that sounds fine.
It's just it's a staging environment. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, exactly. So this
Yes.
actually got me interested, and because in the offensive security space, the quote, the good guys, the white hat hackers, so to speak. There's a couple of products that are out already. Like there's Expo and Horizon 3, which are AI powered penetration tests. And so I was just curious, like how easy, would it be and to make something like that. But before I went to go make it all myself, which is, a pretty huge undertaking, I went and looked for some open source stuff, and there's a bunch of things out for sure. And I started messing with HexStrike, and I was able to pretty easily connect Claude Desktop up to HexStrike MCP servers and get it to start. It went and found the authorization bypass on Gin and Juice Shop by itself. I just asked it. I was like, "Hey, you're authorized to do this Portswigger says this is a playground. You can go do it here. Because at first it was like, yeah, I'm not helping you hack. I see you got some security tools and you're a security person. So cool, but we're not doing that. So I prompted it a little better. And yeah, I mean, as a proof of concept, I think that this is, it was very useful. And I really think that, this is kind of the way the industry is going, I think.
Oh yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that there are a lot of tasks that we do normally as we're doing engagements that could be automated with these types of tools. And in some aspects, some of those engagements could potentially start to look almost more like like a SOC role where you have your different agents running, you're getting the information in, and then you're responding to things as they come in, rather than taking, the much more active role throughout the entire process. And I really do foresee that as being the future as we move forward. Obviously, I wouldn't let something just like loose within a customer environment. But when we're talking about externally facing things, externally facing assets that are getting hammered away day in and day out anyways, and, gathering up information about companies and everything else that you would normally do, I think that this is certainly what we're going to see a lot more of in the near future.
Yeah, I agree with you too. I think that from an external and like even like a web application perspective, right? It's something that's facing the internet. Like I think I'm very comfortable at this point with my AI usage and knowledge to think that like I'm all right with that because like you say, you're already a target, right? Like you're getting hammered away at all day. I don't know that I'm quite ready to let things loose in an internal environment, give it AD creds and say, here you go. I just, I don't know. And the reason I say that is, with the folks that are watching, if you're not aware, Burp Suite has an AI feature where you can say explore issue and it'll take one of the issues in Burp Suite and AI will actually go through and verify it like a human, right? Which is a really cool feature. And, I had one of our other researchers here was telling me he was using it, and it was a command injection finding, and the instead of catting Etsy password on the web server, it went to RM Etsy password on the server. Which
No.
I agree that if you could do that from a web app perspective, that is a finding. That's generally not the way that I would go about trying to do that because I think that would be a bad day for the web app server if that were the thing. But I mean, yeah, I'm not quite ready for the internal, but I think it's coming very soon. So
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
a couple of things Anthropic said: speed and scale. They were able to use thousands of tool calls, often multiple per second, doing work that would take a large human team. And I think that's really kind of where, like from a consultancy perspective, where I think that that's really going to be like a game changer. Because if I can do an external engagement in a day instead of 4 days or whatever our time is now, I that's a huge difference, right? And then also, I think interesting too is Anthropic said that they also use large language model on the defensive side, Claude, for investigating telemetry and investigating the incident. Which I really wish they went into more detail about that because processing large amounts of data with an LLM is actually a trick in itself, right? There's strategies to go about doing that, and I would love to see how they're doing that.
Oh yes, yep, absolutely. Yep.
So a couple takeaways, right? So I think for everyone listening, just start assuming we're in the age of the agentic attacker. Um, and if you're not monitoring what's going in and out of your large language model in terms of input and output, the prompts that are going in, you should be. And I think that it's kind of an interesting take here to look for jailbreak-like task patterns, lots of small testing, like framed as like, hey, I'm testing this thing, right? And so you're going to have to look for patterns of data, which, what do you use for that? Probably an LLM. Again, it's LLMs all the way down.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We're building the robot army. So
Robot army, that's right. My own personal LLM powered botnet, right?
yeah.
So you want to move on to the next story?
Yeah. Yeah. So next one is Kawai. Kauai. Might be Kauai. I'm gonna go with Kauai,
Kauai?
but not like the Hawaii Kauai. It's spelled a little bit different. It's spelled more like if Hawaii had a K. We'll call it
So is it
Kauai.
Kauai? Kauai
Kauai,
GPT? I don't
yeah.
know.
Kauai,
Kauai.
Kauai
Right. Kauai.
GPT. It is a free black hat LLM for script kiddies, but I think it was more than just an LLM, right? I think that it was kind of it was more of like a
Yeah.
tool set, yeah, like a.
So I went and looked briefly, and because it's, it said the article said it was on GitHub, and it's like, oh, cool, it's on GitHub. So I went and looked, and so there were a couple of things that showed up that produced 404. So I guess they're gone. But the one that I did find, it had two Python scripts, an install Python and then, a main Python, right? And, well, I took a look at the Python as, one is apt to do. And I immediately thought, this does not look like just a simple wrapper for an LLM. It looks a little bit sus, right? And so I did what I tend to do these days, and I asked ChatGPT, could you go analyze this link to this Python file and tell me what it says, what it does? And here's what it said, the short version. It's a sketchy local AI assistant that phones home to a remote server, tries very hard to bypass safety, and can literally run shell commands the AI suggests on your machine via a special hacking mode. It's not just a harmless chatbot. And then it gives me a big breakdown of how it works.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, now,
I love when the LLMs throw in like a little bit of personality. Um, like throwing in like the word sketchy, and like I know I was troubleshooting something on a Kali system just yesterday, and I was giving output to an LLM, and it was like, oh, this is Kali being extra helpful with a smiley face, and yeah.
I did one recently, and I can't even remember. It was something helping with a pen test, right? And I said, well, let's do this now, right? And it said, hell yeah, let's do this. I was like, that is hilarious. So I
But
like the extra flavor as well.
yeah, yeah, certainly. So yeah,
But
but this toolkit, I think that it's a good example of that people need to be skeptical or scrutinizing of different tools that you find, especially for free out there. I mean, there are tons of good free tools out there that are heavily used throughout the industry. And I know have been people who have tried to make points before about people blindly grabbing down and using things. I remember this was quite a few years ago that a maintainer of one of the heavily used tool sets that was out on GitHub actually put something into one of the files that had said like, hey, this is just a heads up or just a reality check that y'all are running stuff without checking it. And,
I remember that.
do you remember that? Yeah, there was the whole
Yeah.
conversation in the industry of like, come on. I mean, yeah, I get your point, but like at some point you got to trust someone. And
Yeah. Well, I think that I'm less than a trusting person, but I will admit, I am guilty of just running things sometimes, especially pip installing, trying to troubleshoot something, right? And it's the same kind of thing. Be aware what you're installing, but it's a very difficult kind of thing. Specifically for this LLM, because I think that supply chain kind of vulnerability with pip packages or running models off a Hugging Face. I think that you just have to be careful, right? And so some of the capabilities, like you said, there's tons of free stuff out there. Let's say that you were in the market for a black hat LLM that is going to help you with your hacky hacks. And you want things like polished phishing emails, ransomware notes, Python scripts for lateral movement and exfiltration, full ransomware workflows. Well, you can do that now for free. You can just install Olama and have a big enough video card to run some of the obliterated models that are out there on just like Olama, and you can then get it to create. I've actually tried this on an obliterated model. Create me a full ransomware campaign complete with code, and it will happily oblige. And so I did all that without having to give up the access to my my actual system through back doors, right?
yeah, yeah, certainly.
But hey, I mean, I guess it is for script kiddies. And so some of the things that we had is, other talking points, democratized offense. So you need to know PowerShell and C2 to, pull off command and control and getting a shell on someone's system. Well, yeah, it's a lot easier than it used to be because you can just get, an LLM to write you the code. But it's been my experience that you still have to know a little bit, or because it's not always completely right or functioning.
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, again, if you're doing this within a customer environment, it's good to know so that you can go through and you can review. I mean, what is this doing? Does this look correct? I mean, it's not. We were talking earlier about the difference between like catting out a file versus RMing a file to show a proof of concept, right?
Yeah.
It's important to be able to go through and understand the difference of like, oh yeah, now this is going to be harmless. I understand what it's doing here versus just like, okay, yeah, YOLO. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, so some other takeaways. Assume phishing content is now human quality by default. Yeah, that's been a thing with large language models for a couple of years now, I think.
Mhm.
That's even baked into some security products. I can't remember. I think it was maybe Dark Trace or someone like that we had a customer who wanted our opinion on a module that they were trying to sell them, and it basically would hook into O365 or M365, and for a given user generate a phishing email based on their like emails, and it was astoundingly good, and this was like 2 years ago, so it hadn't gotten worse, right? And
Mhm.
I almost felt like it just wasn't fair, right? Like
Yeah.
that's unfair. But I mean, as a threat actor, if I got access to company email, and I was able to have generate phishing campaigns based on your emails, ooh man, that's
Oh yeah,
nasty.
that's a powerful tool, without a doubt.
Yeah. And then blue team should add detections around unusual SSH automation and email exfiltration. Yeah, I've been saying this for a while. Was it 2019? I think when Microsoft just started including OpenSSH in Windows desktops and servers, right? And it's still to this day very uncommon for us to find that SSH has been locked down outbound out of an environment. I
Mhm.
wouldn't allow it. Period.
Yeah. No.
At all, and I would take it
Yeah.
off the machines. Actually, when I heard over, saw one of our testers recently saying something in a meeting that the customer they had taken SSH off the systems, but they were able just to go to the Windows store and add it back. So
Just
there's a
reinstall
couple.
it.
Still need those network protections. Network protections aren't dead at all, but
Yep. Yep. Traditional security stuff still applies.
yeah.
All
So
right. Should we hit
the
the next
next
one?
one's pretty interesting. The ShadowMQ and inference engines. It's kind of attacking a lower layer below the LLM itself, right?
Yeah. It sounds like it's part of the Inference stack that a lot of different companies use. Some examples are Meta's Llama stack, NVIDIA TensorRT LLM, VLM, SGLang, as well as a couple others. And it's dubbed ShadowMQ because it comes from the use of the 0MQ as well as the Python pickle deserialization. I don't know what you call that protocol format, functionality.
Like I said in our, well, it wasn't pre-show, but before the show, it is the time of the year for this joke. Pickle. It's like the Jelly of the Month Club. It's the gift that keeps on giving, Clark.
Yes.
Again, with pickle deserialization, this was an issue a while back on Hugging Face, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, exactly. With the issue, so for those who aren't familiar, basically a pickle file is a way that you can store a trained model and different properties that are associated with it. So you can grab it down, you can load it up and start using it. The security issue with it is that you can basically put in arbitrary code that will get executed when the model is loaded. So it's like it's trivial to backdoor, basically, to throw in arbitrary executable code into these files. Then someone goes and load it, and boom, you've got code execution just like that. So there are other formats that have come out that I feel have kind of superseded it, which are like safe tensor format, where that's just not a thing. Like you just can't do the code execution in there, and it's a much better way. I think there are a couple others out there too. The names are escaping me, but you got to be. But the bottom line, you got to be very careful if you're dealing with a pickle file that you did not create.
And I guess the article referred to this as the log4j moment for AI infrastructure design. Oh, good.
Yeah,
that
great.
sounds pretty serious.
Yeah. So I think kind of just the main thing, if you're using really any part of some of these major stacks, you really need to check to make sure that you're fully patched up, because this was considered it was ranked with almost like over a 9 severity rating for RCE, and it's certainly a serious deal to make sure that if you've got some of these components exposed out to the internet, want to make sure that they are patched up, ready to go.
Yeah, again, with exposing things to the internet is not always as easy as one thinks it should be, right?
Yeah.
It looks like the CVS scores are 9.3 to 9.8. There must be multiple CVEs.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, that's kind of scary, actually.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. I mean, well, it's again, I mean, AI is just it's another product, and it's going to have issues like any of the other internet facing products that we see out there.
Well,
so
and I think
it's important
still,
to. Oh, go ahead.
no, I was going to say, because this is all still new to companies, I think they're forgetting some lessons they probably would have otherwise never done, right? Like you're going to stick something out on the internet that's running somebody else's Python code, and there's like this huge, software library of code that you're leaning on that you haven't gone and checked through. And it just seems like to me that kind of like as a whole, since the AI industry is moving so fast, like security in the code is just an afterthought. When you're bolting together a bunch of this kind of stuff, I think the pioneers are going to be taking the arrows, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Certainly, it's as we've mentioned many times before, it's the same problem we've seen with a lot of new technologies, is that there's a giant push to get these technologies customer facing or even employee facing as quickly as possible, and security comes later. But just have to be careful and stay up on the latest. All right, the next one. This one, just a quick one to mention, which is that Amazon Nova, which I think is Amazon's line of models. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I've used it. It's not bad.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, I used it through Bedrock.
I've
Just
seen.
messing around.
Yeah, like I've seen them on their store or whatever you want to call it, within their interface, but haven't really played around with them much. But they released their own private AI bug bounty program that is kind of in addition to the one that they've already got going on with HackerOne.
It's pretty interesting. Amazon is, I guess, I'm not being critical, but I kind of late to the AI party in a lot of ways, right? But I think they're coming on pretty fast. I actually just read a semi-analysis article about how they're essentially using now like custom, custom AI chips now. I guess Amazon AWS has a lot of custom hardware in their AWS infrastructure, and I guess now that's even going all the way down to like the silicone layer. Instead of using NVIDIA chips, they're like now using like custom AI chips for stuff. And so I'm glad to see that they have a bug bounty program trying to find issues before before things happen, like in the previous article where there's a log4j moment in their AWS AI infrastructure. Right? So very good. Although I wish I was invited to the private bug bounty.
Same. No, I was reading through the article, and it sounds like it was quite lucrative for those who got invited, that they were paid a large sum of money up front, and then were paid out additional money as they found things as they went through.
I mean, I like money, especially
money's
when
cool.
large goes with the amount. So I got kids going to college. So
yep. Yeah, so I think this is good. It's always good to see just bug bounty programs in general, because it's good. If you're customer of really any service, but I mean, especially these AI services, it's good to ask or at least do some research to see, I mean, are they participating in bug bounty programs and do they regularly get tested? So that way that that like, hey, if you're handing over your data to this company, sure, they say that they don't use it for training, they're just storing it. Well, like how safe is that storage and how safe is their infrastructure? How safe are, everything that you're dealing with in general? I mean, how often does that get tested?
And we were just on a customer call yesterday with a customer that was implementing a third-party AI solution. And they basically said that the vendor did not want them pen testing their products. And I to me, that's kind of a red flag, right? Like, well, okay, now I really want to, right? So I'd like
Yeah.
to see what's, the man behind the curtain now. And so I think that should be a red flag for you if you're going to implement some kind of AI solution and you ask the vendor about security and penetration testing, and they're just like, oh yeah, no, we're not going to do that.
Yep.
That's probably not the answer you want to hear.
No, it's a bit suspicious. As
Yeah.
what was it? John Strand, I think, had a quote from him recently. It's kind of like not wanting people to look in the kitchen. He was referring to something different, but I think it still
Oh,
applies
yeah,
here.
you wouldn't eat
Yeah,
at a restaurant if they wouldn't let you look in the kitchen.
yeah.
And
Then be a
then,
little skeptical.
yeah, I mean, I like the analogy, but also, like, if I'm running a restaurant, I don't want people up in the kitchen. That sounds like a health code violation.
True. Yeah. I get the
Yeah, I
sentiment
guess they
though.
have to
The
be
sentiment's there.
authorized.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
All right.
Let's hit on the next one. So this one actually came from a newsletter from that I got from some of our friends over in the UK at a company called MindGuard, who we've been in connection with
Yeah.
over the past year or two, who deal with AI security testing. But I guess Google launched an Agentic AI IDE that is powered by Gemini 3. And within 24 hours, someone from MindGuard found what they're calling a persistent code execution vulnerability within this new, basically this new IDE that Google dropped.
That doesn't sound good. It
No.
says the bug effectively turns a compromised project into a long-lived backdoor for arbitrary code execution under the user's own identity. That sounds terrible.
Oh, yeah.
But I guess so. Is this any different than a malicious, like Visual Studio project? Like if I'm targeting developers of a company and I know they use Visual Studio, and I was able to trick them into running something and compromising Visual Studio because they trusted the project. Is this any different though?
Oh, I think it's probably similar because as you're mentioning that's I was thinking of that. When you're in Visual Studio Code, it'll always ask like, hey, do you actually trust this as you load? And I mean,
Of course I do.
Yeah, of course, very trustworthy folder.
That's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, but again, I think that if I haven't used the product, and if Google isn't putting those kinds of safeguards in place, like make sure you trust this, and because that's what VS Code does, right? Is like, hey, make sure you trust this. Bad things can happen.
Yeah.
And so yeah. But I mean, hey, my first thought when I read this was it usually only takes about a day for new AI products to get popped, right? Pliny the prompter usually gets a jailbroken LLM, well, sometimes even before they really release it, which is kind of interesting. But
Yes.
yeah, that was my first thought. I was like, oh, is this Pliny the prompter?
Yeah, so I will say it mentioned that Google has acknowledged the issue and said they're going to work on a fix, but others have pointed out that it's just kind of structural to how agentic tools are being
Oh,
shipped.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's not necessarily like something that was done wrong, but it's just it's I mean, like you're saying, I mean, it's just a matter of like you got to be careful and you make sure that you trust whatever it is that you're loading in, so you don't
Yeah, it
end up
says
getting backdoor.
the flaw is structural to how agentic tools are being shipped, high autonomy, broad access, and weak guardrails. I think that's all agentic and MCP kind of stuff at the moment, right?
Oh
You got
yeah,
to be
yeah,
kind of like back to the previous, the second story. You just got to be real careful about what you're running off the internet.
yes. All right.
Treat AI coding and IDEs as high risk software. Yeah, I mean, I think all development can be that way. In fact, we've had
Mhm.
clients in the past that were like, well, just give all the developers admin rights. I'm like, I think you ought to not do that. That sounds like a
No.
terrible idea. I know that I've been on, pen tests in the past where I was able to get on a developer workstation and they had lax, controls on the developer workstation. And it was very beneficial to me as a pen tester, but not to the company at all. That's how I got in. And, for dev teams, don't blindly trust a workspace. Make sure you know what you're trusting.
Yep.
And
Yeah. And then,
I usually run that kind of stuff in a VM anyway, not on my host
yeah,
machine.
it's a good idea not to run on the main system. And yeah, another point is don't just have the run anything as AI mentality. Like one of the things I like about like Claude Code, if you're using it as a coding assistant, is that it asks you before it actually runs anything, which is nice, so you can review it.
Yeah, I really like that feature, kind of human in the loop. Now you can tell it don't do that anymore, right? But
Yeah, you
I
can
like
say
to see,
always trust this. Yeah.
yeah, I kind of like to see what's happening.
Hmm.
I like to still be in the loop and say, yeah, I want you to do that. I don't think I've actually said no, but I've definitely read through like what it's trying to do.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Like I don't want it accidentally like, wiping out an entire directory or something or no,
removing Etsy
do
password or something. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
All right. We'll hit the
All
last
right,
one
the
here.
last story.
PROMPTFLUX, which is we call this a polymorphic malware that is using Gemini AI to rewrite itself hourly, calling out to Gemini's APIs to basically keep rewriting itself as it goes. And it was VBScript, I think, is what the actual malware's in, which is
VB
interesting.
script. Now
Yeah, that's a throwback.
that's a blast from the past, right? I can't
Yes.
remember the last time I saw a VB script, but
No.
I'm sure it still works on Windows machines like all these other weird things. Well, that's really interesting too, that it goes and rewrites itself on the fly.
Mhm.
I'm sure it's not the first example of it, but it sure does have a great name. I like Prompt Flux. It reminds me of Aeon Flux.
Oh yeah, right. I remember that show from back in the day.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
Prompt
cool.
Flux sounds like a cool robot name. So,
Yes, but yeah,
so
yeah, you're
just
right.
in time polymorphism.
Mhm. Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, you're right. I think this isn't the first case of AI powered polymorphism that we've seen. It's certainly not the first case of just polymorphism in general, right? I mean, polymorphism has been around for a little while, but I mean, now that AI is becoming more heavily utilized and leveraged, we're seeing people actually doing this sort of thing where they are just using AI to just basically rewrite the malware on the fly, which is
Yeah,
pretty
and
interesting.
apparently the prompt is one of the things that does make this different is that it's not writing the prompt in prose, that it's machine parsable. So it's basically doing more like code parsable type stuff and not like paragraphs to rewrite, which is kind of interesting. I kind
Yeah.
of like to see those prompts.
Oh yeah, yeah. I completely agree. Yeah, and it also tries to propagate. It looks like too. So it's not just not just like I don't know, like a foothold necessarily, but it's actually like worms itself throughout removable drives and network shares, and also ever mutating itself as it does, not only onto the new systems, but on the current system. It sounds like.
So you combine that with the first story, right, which was the AI agentic hacking thing, and this self-replicating. Now we are in the Daniel Suarez Damon territory, where in a couple of years are we going to be talking about AGI that's loose on the internet as its own like nation state hacker group, and they can't like get the internet clean of it.
Yeah.
That's how we know we really are living in a simulation when that happens. So
Oh yeah, yeah. I think it's inevitable. It's going to just start hiding itself and everywhere. It's going to be like, preserving itself within like Reddit subforums and all
yeah,
that. It's like we're
and
just never
it's
going to
just
get
like
rid
a
of it.
movie. It's just like a movie. I remember, was it Black Hat? I think one of the really crappy like hacker movies where I don't know if it was that one where like the backup code was like on some tape thing that was in some basement of some data center somewhere, and it's like reel to reel tape going, and that's where it stored itself. Like, man,
Yep.
it's, I guess we are getting into this science fiction is reality territory. So,
Oh, yes. Yep. It is here. So,
yeah, good times.
yep. So I guess takeaways on this one, obviously, we're not saying that people shouldn't be using signature approaches. I mean, it's always about layers, right? Don't throw out something just because it doesn't work 100% of the time. So signature stuff, definitely still keep that in place, but realize that obviously it's not going to catch things like this that are constantly rewriting themselves. So it's really important to look more towards behavioral and telemetry-based approaches for detection. But on just the the prevention side, obviously, making sure that your network is locked down, looking at how your systems are able to communicate with one another, who has access where. Still all the same security practices, right? So even if a box gets popped, you can at least mitigate the damage, so to speak.
Yeah, I like the line item here. Look for suspicious calls out to LLMs from scripts. I mean, doing that at a host like at a host level is very beneficial. In fact, we have clients now who are using EDR to look for calls out to large language models that aren't approved. I would definitely, if it were my network, that's what I would be doing is looking for, all right, you're not supposed to be using Gemini. Why are you using Gemini? Why is Visual Basic Script using Gemini? Oh, crap.
Yes. And it keeps calling out to it at every hour on the hour.
Yeah, not recommended in better homes and gardens. So.
No. Well,
all right. I think we made it through the stories.
Yeah, excellent. Well, so thanks everyone for tuning in again for another episode. I hope you enjoyed our take on the news stories, and tune in for our next one. And as always, keep safe and keep on prompting.